Have you ever wondered what it would be like to feel steady and confident in your parenting? Do you ever think about how to truly savor these precious years with your growing people? And perhaps most importantly, do you dream of creating connected relationships that endure beyond childhood? I'm Carrie Conti, and I've spent the last 2 decades guiding, supporting, and inspiring parents to know and trust themselves deeply. And as a result, there are thousands of parents all over the world who feel skillfully equipped, personally fulfilled, and authentically connected with their people in all phases of development. Join me, along with my friend and collaborator, Christian Manieri, as we explore what it means to not parent. Let's get untangling.
So Carrie, as we were saying in the last episode, we're going to kind of kick off this time together with a conversation about our own individual relationships with technology. And again, I love that we're starting there because I feel like so much comes out of self-awareness when we actually just take the time to just look in and be like, what is this? What's going on for me in this? Yeah. So let's start out with that. So first of all, why is it so important that we begin to untangle our own relationship with technology? And what are some ways that we would be able to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it really, the big overview point is that if you are guiding somebody, if you're and I do believe that parents are the leaders of the family. And I think young people do value having a leader, even if they push against that person. But when you've just come on this planet and there's all this stuff happening that you can tap into and you can go explore, and really the knowing of finding yourself is really one of the biggest parts of this game of being a human. Having a human guiding you who is doing that, not having it done, there's never done, but having a parent person or a caregiver who really is saying like, okay, there's a whole world out there that I can play with. Now, the only real way I can make sense of it is by going inward and getting some clarity on what it is I'm all about. What am I here to explore? What am I here to learn? And that doesn't mean that you're going to figure yourself out and then give it to your kid. The value of you doing it is showing your work. It's showing your people, oh, this is how I'm approaching being a human. And so to me, technology is this extraordinary place to be doing that because you're doing it in real time with them. You're not saying I've got it figured out. Like, I know how much exercise I need. I know what kind of foods I should eat and I feel best with. But you're saying like, oh, wow, I'm tumbling around in this. It's new to me. So isn't that cool that I'm going to say, you know what? I want to figure this out for me. And then I want to be able to at least impart some of what I'm learning and give you the tools and not tell you the tools, but show you the tools so that you start to wire in your neurology the capacity to navigate the world with more clarity and more self-awareness from inside.
So what would be some first steps to start going down that path?
Yeah, I might sound like a broken record, but I am going to hold to it. It's to slow it down and to recognize so I use the pause. I talk about the pause all the time. And I think it does 2 things. It's when we use it more preventatively, when we use it as like, okay, I'm going to practice pausing. I'm going to stop what I'm doing and, notice if I normally grab my phone first thing, I'm going to pause and just see what happens if I don't do that. I'm just going to take a couple moments and really let the dust settle. That's step 1, not just to practice it, but then also you have access. When you practice it, you have more access to it in those moments where you are being faced with a choice that maybe somebody's asking you for an answer and you've already embodied this knowing of like, oh, I do best when I slow things down. When I have a little bit of space, that allows me to go in and hear something. It's also essential, in my opinion, with this particular topic of technology, because the technology it's taking our attention. That's the point of it. It wants us to stay engaged. And so when we are practicing this skill of pausing, it's more likely that when we are getting pulled in, we're going to catch ourselves and go, "Ooh, wait, pull out. Like, where am I? What am I doing?" And in those moments, then we're going to have a little bit of a sense of like, okay, I was just going toward that because I'm out of sorts and I just wanted something to, numb me. But really, what do I actually need? So first there's the pause. And then there's the starting to really recognize how this whole human system works. So, I often talk about the brain and realizing like when we are overdone, when we're full up and nourished and resourced, we have access to an awareness that's really tapped in, and that there's a lot of awareness and knowing about how to proceed with life that we can access when we've done the work of tuning in and tuning up. And when we know where we are in our brain state and we know like, oh, wow, I'm really full up. Great. Okay. It's a good time to check email, or it's a good time to, or I don't want to get on my device. I want to go do something that is more connected or more human. When we start to get overdone, it's just an easy thing to grab because it's become so habitual that we often go toward this thing because there's something we're kind of unconsciously looking for. It's almost like we've come to use it to soothe, but does it really soothe? So knowing the brain state, and then when we're really overdone and we're starting to, say negative things to ourselves or be snippy and unkind to our people, the recognition of that, the naming it so that we can shift it becomes essential. There's the brain, there's the body. I've been actually encouraging my people to really start tuning into their heart more, like the actual, both the emotional swirls that are happening, but also even deeper, that actual like feel your heartbeat. Like that's present moment. If you can stop yourself and sense your heart, that's bringing you back in a way that is just potent, like really powerful. And then to me, getting a read on the brain state, getting a read on the body tension, getting a read on where our heart is, that is just opening more space for that knowing, that deeper isness to come through. And to me, that's the guide inside. That's the tuning system that allows for us to navigate this world that is not, there's no path laid out. No. And you have to carve it. And so slowing it down, going within, getting clear on like, what do I love about this life? Like, what does add value? What does nourish me? What does regulate me? What helps me feel steady and sturdy as I move through the day? Like getting to know ourselves and then finding clarity around, okay, so when I know that, what do I value? What are the languages I want to be speaking to myself, to my others, to the world, to my community? And then you add in this thing, this technology, we'll call it, the devices, the gadgets, and all that they do for us. And what that typically does is it adds a layer that's very far out from me and me. The me and me is the closest in. That's the closest in relationship. So giving that a little bit more of our time and energy than maybe we do is always valuable. Then there's you and your people, and we'll talk about that the next episode. And then there's you and your community. And this is still real human to human. But then there's everything out there. And a lot of that is coming to us in a way that has never happened on our planet ever before, that we can have access to beautiful things, but also a lot of pretty heavy duty and traumatic things. So when we are aware, when we have these skills of self-awareness and clarity, it's a way of taking care of ourselves so that what I believe is we start to be a lot more thoughtful and discerning about what we're willing to consume. Like I said that earlier, but I'm saying it again. It's like we're consuming. I want everybody to hear that there's no right or wrong, but there is a level of consumption of information and of other people's thoughts and of ways of perceiving and levels of awareness that may not be where we are. And when we open that door so fully, when we fling the doors open and we go headlong into our devices and apps, it has an impact on this human system. And so starting to recognize what does happen. So first step is really just starting to notice. Like, I'm not asking anybody to make any changes yet. I'm just inviting people to get curious and to really, with a lot of compassion and tenderness, like, own, what am I doing? How is this affecting me? Is this working? Is it not working? Is this adding to my sense of steadiness and my presence with others? Or is this taking away from that? Am I able to integrate this? I wouldn't invite anybody to sit with a bag of candy corn and just eat it endlessly. You're going to feel really sick. And I really do believe there are aspects of our modern world and the technology that has the same effects on our brain and body. And so being somebody who's curiously exploring that and really starting to do that with a lot of open and spaciousness, not like, oh, I figured it out, let's go this direction, but like, this isn't going anywhere. So if you end up taking your time with this and you tell your people, like, I'm figuring this out for me, like, hey, we all jumped into this soup of technology. And I'm the one that has enough awareness right now to go, okay, there's a lot of things we get from this, but I need to actually understand how this is affecting me, because that's going to influence how it affects all of you, because I set the tone, especially in family life. I just want to encourage people and give people support around doing that.
And I'm so glad that you said, take your time with this, because one of the things I was reflecting on yesterday, as I was just thinking about our time together today, is I have a relationship with my phone, right? Like, exactly. We've been together for about 13 years now, and it's been a journey. And I can see that, the beginning part was like all in. I heard you say one time, it was like Christmas morning. It was like, yay, wee! Yeah. Like, I remember putting on every app. I mean, it was literally like, oh my God, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. It was so much fun. And then, as I reflected and kind of like looked at the timeline of this relationship, seeing like, oh wow, like, I needed to start putting boundaries in, and what have I tried, and what sort of rules and games and stuff have I played with myself, and in terms of trying to keep some distance from the technology, and how I've been around social media. And it was just a really interesting thing to reflect that I have been on a journey to try to negotiate a relationship with this thing that is always near me, always on me, always around, sort of omnipresent thing.
Yeah.
And that here I am 13 years later, and I have some things figured out. There's some boundaries that have just stuck. They work. I'm clear. And then there's just some that haven't. And it's a kind of a moving target. And so I want to just underscore again, like, wow, this section, this you in technology, getting clear about where are you at? What do you want? It really would be nice to just take a while to unpack that and to discover that.
Yeah, I agree. I love how you said that this is a relationship. I say that often, and taking time to really consider, how am I in relationship with this, and what that all means is really, like, I think that's a courageous and really intelligent act. That, like, let's just pause and start, like, looking at it, and I agree. I feel like when the iPhone and all different technologies, games and all sorts of stuff, when they appeared, it's like, holy moly, this exists. Like, wow. And then it just kind of took on a momentum of like, oh, then there's more, and then there's more, and then there's more. So I think, like, I love the idea that you're just going to take your time with this. And that, to me, is, if you do nothing else, but you just start to slow yourself down around it in general, I think anybody will glean. Once we shine the light on something, it just starts to shift. And that's not always easy or comfortable, but I think there's a way that we're all going to find a new normal, a new balance with this. But I do think that takes clicking on that level of awareness of like, oh, right, this is a relationship and I need to be aware of how I'm interacting with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this first step is simple, but not necessarily easy, right? It is
Correct.
the
Yes.
pausing, slowing down. Where am I at? Getting clarity, pulling out my journal. And I know in your course, this is a deep dive of really, being guided through what are the questions I should be asking for myself. But one that really comes up for me, and I just want to touch on this quickly before we finish up, is that like a big part of it for me is the do as I say, not as I do model of parenting just doesn't work. It just doesn't, right? Like I've never seen it work, especially when they become teenagers and they call you out on that. Yes,
that's right.
Just the hypocrisy just isn't going to work as a model of parenting. And so modeling, like getting clear that I need to get this relationship with my phone or my technology really solid, because they are watching, and that is what they're going to do. They're not going to listen to my mouth. They're going to watch the thing that I'm doing all day long with my technology. I wonder if you would just speak a little bit to that, this importance of getting this sturdy so that we can model what we actually want to see out there.
Yeah. And I think that it goes back to that question of fear and that idea that, as a parent, if you're not taking the time to really think about like, what is my relationship with this as an individual before you apply it to parenting, I think you can just be swirling in a fear of like, is it too much? Am I doing it right? It's all that stuff gets like heightened around this topic. And what I am visioning when I ask people to join me for anything, but specifically this exploration, is you're like landing the airplane that's been flying kind of on autopilot. And you're just deciding like, are we going in a direction that I want to be going? Or do I need to, really consider like not just where we're going, but the mode of travel? Like what are we actually going for? And I really feel like being somebody who says to your people, like, I'm going to consider this because I know it's here to stay and I know it's going to be a part of your life. And I don't want to come at it from a place of fear or judgment. I want to really have a sense of like, here's what it is for me. And here's what I want to do to guide you. And I know that I can't control what you do later. But while we're in this form of our relationship, what a beautiful way to step into something very authentic and honest with your humans and model something that could eventually really help them have a system built into them, or at least an awareness that that system exists, that is going to allow them to make some clearer and more, aligned choices. And that's the word I haven't used yet, but I will. It's like, if you're in alignment, which means like you're feeling present and you're feeling open and you've got a sense of yes around your technological relationship, your relationship with technology, keep going. Do it. That's working. Like use that internal guidance system of like, really, here I am. And I feel like head, heart, gut, all lined up. And if not, if I feel like I kind of feel like sometimes it's good and sometimes it feels yucky, it's like go headlong into that and start exploring, because it's easy to want to run from that. And then we end up kind of creating some patterns of, like, it's good, it's not good. Like that's where the ambivalence and that's where the wobbliness comes from. And so finding ways to play around in this game of alignment and finding the answers from within and getting a clarity that feels not just sounds good or it's what somebody else is doing, but it's like a knowing, that's my whole shtick. It's like, I want people to know and trust themselves. And I know that this is almost like a training ground for that, because it is so big and it has so many facets to it. And so when I work with people, we always start with self. We always start with you and your relationship with anything, but specifically with technology, because that's going to give you the place that you operate from. That's going to give you that platform on which to stand so that as you're interacting and helping your people and conversing more than anything and being curious, when you feel steady and sturdy and confident, you can be curious about things and you can open up conversations with your people in a way that will not happen if you're just spinning in fear, because they can sense that and that doesn't open. So as you walk this very uncharted adventure with your people, being okay with not always knowing and being okay with not having it all figured out, but showing them what it means to not just learn by hearing, because that words don't teach, it's experience that teaches. There's going to be a courage and there's going to be an excitement that comes through for you that will inspire your people to want to be more curious about it. So, I use the example of if you just say, hey, that's bad, we're not going to do it, but then you're not really holding that because you have to use it for some things. And you're just, wiggling and wobbling all over the place, they're not going to be inspired to engage in those kinds of bigger questions of what does this all mean for us as individuals, as much as if you're like, yeah, I'm going to be a mess about this for a while, but that's because I'm digging in and I'm going to start questioning and I'm going to start considering what's possible and I'm going to experiment and I'm going to tell you all about it because this is what's up right now.
I love that. I just love this idea of just declaring hey, we're going to be wobbly about this for a while. We're going to make some changes. We're going to experiment. We're going to try things. So that's great. Well, I can't wait to talk more about that relationship with child, parent, technology, the sort of triad that we're all in together in the next episode. So that was great. It was great to be with you today.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Not Parenting. For any resources or offerings we spoke about in the episode, remember you can head to carrieconti.com or you can click on the links in the episode show notes. Thanks for being here.